By the way, my name's Brandon. I get to serve as one of the leaders here. Thank you for being here today. We're doing something this week that we had never done this before. We do something about once a quarter that we call StoryTeller Sunday. And I like to say we turn our stage into kind of Oprah with Jesus. And we're not giving away Pontiacs. But we invite people up and they tell their story, what God has done in their lives, and then we kind of just converse about what God has done in their lives. And so we did that last week, but the stories were just so good, and maybe a little long, that we decided to do a part 2 today. So we've never done a part 2 before. So everybody say, "I'm excited for part 2." Man, I think I believe you. So before we do that, I wanted to kind of set this up just a little bit. Like I said, we do this all the time, and it's one of the things that makes Story Church unique, is that we actually believe in the power of story. We believe that Revelation 12:11, when it says that we overcome the enemy by the blood of the Lamb, by what Jesus did, and by the word of our testimony, telling the story of what Jesus did, and doing so fearlessly, not shrinking from death, that there's power in that. Revelation 19:10 takes it a step further and says that the testimony of Jesus, when we talk about what Jesus has done in our lives, everybody say is, the spirit of prophecy. Romans 10:17 says that faith comes by hearing, and hearing about the good works of God. How do we hear about the good works of God? Well, we tell the story about what he has done in our lives. And so I was thinking about that this morning on the way in, and I saw, I don't know why anybody would have this, but this person had a sticker on their car of one of the dinosaurs from the Disney movie. I think it's Disney. I don't even know if it's good enough to be Disney. But the Land Before Time. Does anybody remember that movie forever ago? So it had one of the characters on that, and I was riding in with John Justice, a buddy of mine, and he was like, "Oh, I remember that movie." I was like, I didn't like that movie. My little sister loved it, but I didn't like it at all. And he's like, "Yeah, I think I kind of remember that." And he went "Oh, but I remember that they did a sequel and another sequel, and those kind of were the direct to video ones, right?" And so if you were of a certain age, you remember before streaming, you remember direct to DVD, direct to Blu-ray. Then maybe direct to DVD. And if you got a little more gray in your beard or in your hair like I do, you might even remember direct to VHS. Tell me how old you are without telling me how old you are. I remember picking out the VHS at Blockbuster. So anyway, I was thinking about that, and I realized that the model has flipped. The model used to be when you do a big release, you put it on the big screen, right? And then when you do a subsequent smaller release, you just put it on the little screen. And so if you had a big movie that you were doing, you would put it out on as many big screens across the nation as you could. And then you realize, especially if you were a company like Disney, you realize, okay, we've got some more movies in the can around this same story. We know they're not quite as good, but we know that we can get your 7-year-old to convince you to buy it. So we're going to go straight to video on those. So that used to be the model, right? Big screen for big release, little screen for little release. And I realized that, oh, wait, the model's kind of flipped, right? Now, especially when we had COVID, right? Nobody wanted to go sit in an enclosed movie theater with other people that might sneeze on them, right? Nobody wanted that. So during COVID, the big release was on your screen at home. It was straight to video, straight to streaming. And then now things have kind of equaled out a little bit more. Life is back to some semblance of normal after the last several years. And now a really big release is going to be on theater screens and streaming at the same time. Or maybe even just to streaming, because there's so many more eyeballs in households than there are in theaters anymore. So the model has flipped. Everybody say the model flipped. And so I thought about that, and I realized that Jesus does this a lot. Jesus flips the script on us fairly often. And I thought about a story. You've heard me talk about this before, but there's the story of Jesus going to the Decapolis, or the Gerasenes. It's on the other side of the Sea of Galilee from where he was hanging out most of the time. It's where all the Gentiles and people who were not Jews lived at that time. There were some Jews that lived there, but it was the majority of folks there were what we call Gentiles. And so Jesus goes from Galilee over here, and he meets this guy that we don't even know his name. The scholars give him different names or different characteristics, but the demoniac of the Gerasenes or the demon-possessed man, we don't even know his name. But what we do know about him, and this happens in all 3 of the synoptic gospels, by the way, And what happens is that there's this man who is possessed by demons. And some scholars say like maybe even 1,000 demons were resident in this dude's body. And I read a commentary earlier that said that he was utterly alone. He was naked, he was nameless, and he was living in the grave. Not a lot of lonelier places than that. And the reason that he was living in that space in that way was because the demon possession was such a difficult affliction for him that, one, it said that he would cut himself just to try and relieve some of the pain. It said that the supernatural power that existed as a result of his demon possession made him so strong that he could not be controlled. They would try to put him in metal chains, and he would just break them off, and he would tear off his clothes and terrorize the people around. Everyone there was terrified of this guy. And Jesus decides one day to go see this guy. And he's already flipping the script in different ways. So when he's in Galilee, it says that there were crowds that were looking for him, and he says, I got an appointment over here. So he's flipping the script there. Like for us, if I'm honest, I'm hoping that I'm listening to the Lord in this space. I hope that I would be obedient. But if I'm here, oh man, there's a big crowd that wants to hear you preach, I'm probably oh, okay, cool, let's go do that. Jesus flips the script. No, I have an appointment with somebody else right now. I don't need the crowd. I need to go do this. And on the way to the appointment, he is in the boat. They're on the Sea of Galilee. And on the Sea of Galilee, there's this big storm. Anybody ever been on a boat in a storm? It's terrifying. And so in this space, he flips the script again. The disciples are freaking out. They're afraid for their lives. And Jesus is taking a snooze. He's cool as the other side of the pillow. Sleeping. And Jesus flips the script in that he's not afraid of the elements. As a matter of fact, he flips it again in the sense that when we hear about a storm, when the weathercaster gets on there and tells us about a big blizzard coming or a hurricane or whatever, some big natural event, we freak out, right? We make a Costco run, we buy all the toilet paper there is. Jesus is no. I'm not subject to nature. I'm flipping the script. Nature is subject to me. And so he gets across the sea, and you think, oh, he's got an appointment over there. There's probably there's a group of people he's preaching to, or there's some important meetings with Pharisees or leaders of the church that he's got to get together. No, there's this demon-possessed dude, and that's it. And it says that the guy walks up on him. Jesus gets out of the boat, and the guy walks up on him, and the demon's speaking oh, Son of the living God, what are you doing here? Are you here to torture us before the appointed time? Please, 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 don't send us into the abyss. Don't destroy us. But instead, there's this herd of pigs. Would you just let us go into there instead? And so Jesus, all right, go. Get out. And so they go, and we know the story there that they jump into the herd of pigs, and the herd of pigs jumps off a cliff and dies. And here we are with, naked, formerly demon-possessed dude. This is an awkward conversation, right? Oh, hi, Jesus. Thank you. You got some fig leaves or anything for me? But this is where Jesus flips the script one more time. You see, we see Jesus do this a lot. There's a 2-word invitation that Jesus offers all of the disciples and others. Follow me. Follow me. And then usually when Jesus heals someone or delivers them or does something miraculous in their life, he usually says, hey, by the way, you don't got to tell anybody about this. Just go offer the right sacrifice at the temple for your healing, and you don't need to say a thing. And I've always wondered about that, right? He's doing these amazing miracles. Why wouldn't you tell somebody? I wonder if part of it is because, man, if I couldn't walk before and y'all saw me get up and walk, there's not a lot I have to say. It's kind of hard to argue with a changed life. But in this setting, and actually we could pull this up, in Mark chapter 5, I believe it is, 18 through 20, it says, as Jesus was getting back in the boat, so he comes over, he meets with this dude, and then he's out. He doesn't have other meetings here. He came over just for this. So he's getting back into the boat. The man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Please, Lord, let me go with you. You saw what my life was like. I don't care. I know the Son of Man has no place to lay his head and all. I'm good with it. Let me come with you. And Jesus said, no, go home to your own people. Tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. So instead of like asking him to follow, he actually says, nope, go back. And instead of telling him to be quiet, he says, hey, tell your story. And when you think about the fact that he crossed the sea, went through the storm, did all the things that he did just for this dude who we don't even know his name, it makes you wonder. I wonder what that storm was about. Because again, Revelation 12:11 says that we overcome who? The evil one. By the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimony. So Jesus says, hey, I did some stuff for you. Go talk about it. And we don't have time to go into the rest of the context here, but what we do know is that the next time Jesus comes back over to the Decapolis, well, let me read here. He went and he did that, and all the people were amazed. So the next time Jesus comes over, all of the people that needed healing show up. And it says that Jesus healed all of them. So because of the word of the testimony of this man, overcame all kinds of nonsense in the Decapolis. And I thought, man, that's like the perfect StoryTeller Sunday story. And I wonder for us today, as you hear a little bit more from Arlene and Antoine today, sorry, Antoine, primarily Arlene, I wonder if you're going to see how God flipped the script a little bit for her. And I wonder even more if you'll begin to see how God is flipping the model and the script for you a little bit. And maybe there's something about you telling your story. Maybe there's something about you telling a different story than the one you have been telling. Maybe you've been telling the story about how difficult things are. Maybe you've been telling the story about how depressed you are, or how addicted you are, or how struggling, whatever the thing is. And hear me, I'm not in any way diminishing the difficulty of those things. But I am saying, I wonder if Jesus has another story to flip. I wonder if there's something that he wants to do in and to and through your life that will allow you to be like this dude who we don't even know his name, that is going to get a whole lot of other people healed and whole because you were willing to tell the story that God gave you. Amen? Okay, so with that, I failed to do this last time. I'll do it this time. If you're a guest with us, just so you know, like in this space, we often talk about some fairly raw stuff. And so we often talk about mental health. We talk about drug abuse. We talk about violence, sexuality. There's a number of things that will take place in this moment as a means of describing what God has done in our life. Because it's difficult to understand. It's difficult to fully understand and comprehend joy if I haven't experienced sorrow. The word says that he who is forgiven much, everybody say much, loves much. And so when we see the stories, and we say this a lot of times, don't look at what Arlene and Antoine did. You need to hear some of that so you understand the context, but instead look at what God did. Look at what Jesus is doing and has done in their lives. Amen? Okay, all right, so we're going to cut the stream. So just so if you're joining us online, it's better. Everybody say it's better in the room. Better in the room. They said it, I didn't. Actually, I did too. So we'll see you next week online. Otherwise, join us, but we try not to stream this section just to keep people's privacy and stories a little bit more honored. So with that, I'm going to invite Arlene and Antoine.